Good afternoon, members. To all members of Environment and Regeneration Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the Environment and Regeneration Committee, which is a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the chamber Wednesday the 9th of November at 4 p.m. And I'll just tick the attendance. Alderman Morris Devaney.
Here, Karen.
Alderman Derek Hussey. Not yet. Alderman Kerrigan. Yeah. Alderman David Ramsey. Councillor John Boyle.
He's on his way.
On his way. Okay. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
Here, Karen, online.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Edwards.
Here, Karen, online.
Thank you. Councillor Rachel Ferguson.
Here, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson is in the chamber.
Sure.
Yeah. Councillor Dan Kelly.
And Shaw, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Emma McGinley.
And Shaw, Karen, online.
Thank you. Councillor Rory McHugh. Here. Thank you. Councillor Maeve O'Neill.
Yep, here, Karen.
Thank you. And Councillor Martin Riley is in the chamber. Thank you, Chair.
Online, Karen, Director.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Record an apology from Alderman Ramsey.
Yeah.
Right, members, that's on to the broadcast statement. I'd like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council website, www.derristheban.com. So that's that. Declaration of members' interest. If anyone has anything they wish to put in now at this stage, or if they wish to raise it when we come to the item. So if there's nobody at present, Councillor Edwards.
Kelly.
Or sorry, Councillor Kelly. Sorry, Dan.
No boy. Yeah, just a non-pecuniary interest in the Drainage Council, Chair.
And Chair, the same for myself, Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Members, nothing else at this stage. We'll move on to item 5, and that is to receive a presentation from representatives of LWP regarding the Living with Water programme. So we'll hand over to Simon and Pete Gray.
Sure, thank you very much. If I could just share my my screen, I'll put the presentation up if that's okay. Just doing that now. If you could just confirm if that's coming up.
Yeah, that's up now. Thank you.
Start that from the beginning. Sure, thank you very much. My name is Simon Richardson and I'm the Director of the Living with Water programme within the Department for Infrastructure, and with me this afternoon is Pete Gray, who's the Associate Director of Arup Consulting, who is our partner consultant. As part of my presentation today, just the agenda, I want to give you a bit of a background to what the Living with Water programme is. We'll then move on to the nature-based catchment management study that we did in Derry along with Pete's team. How we're now progressing the development of a London Derry strategic drainage infrastructure plan. I want to talk to you about a proposed pilot scheme we have about a Newley and Crescent, and then I'll happily take some questions and answers towards the end. So just a bit of background into what Living with Water is, and if you forgive me for talking about Belfast for a couple of minutes, but the Living with Water programme started in Belfast back in 2014 when it became clear that the infrastructure in Belfast wasn't fit for purpose. And the executive at that time then asked for the development of a strategic drainage infrastructure plan for Belfast with 3 key objectives. First, to protect against flooding, to enhance the environment, that's the water quality environment, and also to grow the economy, to make sure that the wastewater treatment works and the sewers, the foul sewers within the city had the capacity to allow future housing and future development. Now, to develop this plan, an interdepartmental group called the Living with Water Programme was established, and that was a multi-departmental right across central government and also along with the councils and local government around Belfast Lough. And we were commissioned then to deliver and to develop the Living with Water in Belfast plan, which is a strategic drainage infrastructure plan for Belfast. Now, throughout the plan, we've used this schematic, and it really just highlights the fact that living with water is about managing the flow of water down through a catchment. So it's trying to deal with water at source rather than trying to get it into pipes where it has the potential to flood. We're trying to slow the flow of water. So if you see in the left hand side, the upper catchment, in the upper catchment up on the hills, we're trying to use things like leaky dams where we're going to block rivers and allow to hold the water back. As we then move down into the middle catchment, where we're looking in the urban areas, we're looking at potential green spaces where we can attenuate the water for short time to stop the water running quickly into the pipes and the sewers, and then the sewers overflowing and untreated sewage then discharging into our water courses and ultimately down into Lough Foyle. And then in the lower catchment, we'll maybe be using more traditional drainage methods where we're using storm separation and maybe have to use bigger pipes, and I'll absolutely have to do some improvement works to the water treatment works or the wastewater treatment works to make sure that we have the capacity to build houses. So this is shown for Belfast, but it equally applies to what we want to do in Derry. This is the catchment for Belfast. The 6 blue dots around that you see around the shore of Belfast Lough, those are the wastewater treatment works that are discharging into Belfast Lough. So that's where the water quality issue is what we're trying to identify there, both coming out of the wastewater treatment works and also the discharges from the rivers from the CSOs. What we did, we split each of the catchments in Belfast down into smaller catchments. You can see the Clowney catchment there to the bottom left-hand side. And what we did in the Belfast plan, we looked at those specific smaller catchment and we tried to identify, you see in the top left-hand corner, the pressures and issues. So are there flooding pressures? Are there flooding issues in that area we need to deal with? Are there water quality issues? And then ultimately, are there development constraint issues? Are there areas where we can't build houses because we don't have the capacity within our wastewater networks? And over to the right-hand side, then we've identified where the opportunities are to do blue-green type infrastructure. So other in the upper in the hills there, which is number 1, can we do some leaky dams? Can we hold the water back up there? As we move down into the catchment, are there potential green spaces, maybe that the council own or the housing executive own, that we can work with those colleagues to try and bring forward blue-green infrastructure to allow us to attenuate the water. Now, this is the Belfast. This is Belfast. I'm going to finish up. The Belfast plan itself looks at £1.4 billion. 716 million of that is upgrades to the 6 wastewater treatment works that I pointed out. About 485 million will be improvements to the sewer networks, where we just have to build bigger pipes because there's no other alternative. But then there's a £200 million not an allocation. It's certainly not an allocation yet, but we've budgeted where we need to spend about £200 million trying to bring forward blue-green, sustainable, integrated schemes that brings multiple benefits, not just for drainage and water quality, but also, as I say, for future development. So then the second point I want to touch on is how we've moved the Belfast work up to Derry. And this is where Pete and his team have come in. Pete and his team were commissioned working on the A2 Buncrana Road development, and they came forward to the Living with Water programme team, my team, to say that the drainage element of the A2 Buncrana Road scheme had identified 5 detention basins adjacent to the carriageway. So those are attenuation ponds where the road drainage would flow into those ponds, be held, and then would flow more slowly into the watercourse network. That just means that it reduces the risk of flooding. However, those attenuation ponds that I've highlighted with the green circle are also adjacent to zoned land. As you will all know, this is land that's zoned in the area plan and is obviously there for development. It's higher costs, so for us to take up space using attenuation ponds in those areas not only costs additional money, but it's using up land that could have been used for development. So we've looked Each team have looked at other ways of trying to bring forward the necessary attenuation ponds. Hopefully, if you can see my cursor, so we've reduced the 5 that were shown along the carriageway. We've reduced that into a hybrid surface water attention strategy, and we've kept two of the attenuation ponds along the carriageway. But there's one here offset from the carriageway. It's an O'Neill Crescent, and I'm going to come on to that later. But what we've done there is we've taken away 3 of the ponds that are adjacent to the road in the development land and tried to attenuate the water off-site, offline, in a cheaper location, and something that we can develop also as an amenity site as well. But I will come on to that. But that's how we've moved the Living with Water approach from Belfast to Derry. And that's, as I say, that's O'Neill Crescent's highlighted there. So some of the catchment issues just right across the city, as you may know, but I'm quickly going to run through this because I'm very conscious of time. But you can see the top left there with rural runoff, and as I say, that's where the water cascades down from the hills down into the city. And you've got uncontrolled surface water runoff. You've got culverted water courses. You've got CSOs, it's combined sewer overflows, and that's when too much water gets into a combined sewer and it has to spill out, and it spills out into a water course, causing pollution. And then we have the wastewater treatment works that we want to increase capacity. So those are the issues that we have around the city, and then the potential nature-based catchment opportunities that we have. So top left there, where we had the runoff from the fields, we've got natural flood management. How do we hold that back in the hills around the city? Surface water attenuation, that's the O'Neill Crescent scheme that I'm going to come on to later on as well. And then over across here, you've got the daylighting of culverts. So where culverts maybe are under capacity, instead of digging them up and put bigger pipes in, why not open them up and make them streams? You know, you've got biodiversity benefits from that as well. And then to the right-hand side, storm separation. That's where we try and keep clean water out of the sewer net, the combined sewer networks. So if you can keep the clean water out of the combined sewers, there's less chance of it spilling and less chance of untreated sewage being discharged into the water courses. So from that work we've done on the A2 Buncrana Road with Pete and his team, we've then moved on to the development of a similar strategic drainage infrastructure plan in Derry that we've been working on in Belfast. So back in 2021, the minister at the time instructed us to commence work on a strategic drainage infrastructure plan for Derry, similar to Belfast, but also asked us to bring forward a pilot scheme that was linked to the A2 Buncrana Road, so a sustainable drainage scheme. And that, as I said earlier, will be the O'Neill Crescent scheme, that's the one is in the planning process or the development process at the moment, which I will touch on later. Now, similar to the Belfast geographical plan that I showed you, this is our estimation at the moment. It hasn't been finalised of where we would see a Derry strategic drainage infrastructure plan covering. That would be the boundary. So within that boundary, we need to gather as much information as possible within that boundary. So we need data sources, we need plan schemes. What are the council doing in certain areas? What are housing executive doing in certain areas? And can we collaborate with those organisations to bring forward schemes? And we can record that in the plan and bring those plans and known pressures and issues. So we're trying to identify where the problems are within that area and identify what works are ongoing so that we could collaborate with those organisations. So the benefits to the area, support and enhance delivery of the council's plans. So hopefully what we can do here is increasing the capacity of the Northern Ireland water sewage systems and the wastewater treatment works to facilitate foul connections, which ultimately facilitates development, whether that be housing or other development within the city, which is hugely, hugely important. It also helps us reduce flooding, fluvial flooding from rivers, and also flooding from the sea as well. And as I pointed out earlier, these blue-green opportunities gives us the chance to enhance the recreation and amenity spaces within the city as well, and create sustainable, biodiverse, vibrant city. So it's trying to bring forward sustainable solutions that have multiple benefits right across the city. Now, the development of this London Derry Strategic Drainage Infrastructure Plan, we're sitting at the moment, and we hope to have we're doing it in 2 stages. We want to inform yourselves and inform people in the city of what we're trying to do. This is a long-term plan. It's not a short fix. We're not going out next week to to solve a drainage problem within a certain area. That still remains with the main drainage organisations, NI Water, DFI Rivers, DFI Roads. But what this plan is trying to do is trying to bring together all the pressures right across the city and see if we can come forward with holistic solutions that are going to have long-term sustainable outcomes. So the first step in this way is we want to provide a strategy development program, so we're going to put that out for consultation early next year to let people comment and read what we're doing and what Living with Water is about. And we would hope to publish that by the summer of next year. And we'll take the comments back from that as well, and that will feed into the development of the full plan, the strategic drainage infrastructure plan for Derry. And that will then, that will look at we're looking at a completion there of 2025. As I say, this is a plan, a strategic plan. It's not a short-term fix, and it will take time to consider all of the pressures, the issues, and the opportunities that we have across the city. So what's the involvement of the council? The council have been hugely supportive to us so far in the work that we've been trying to do, and they've attended a number of workshops with us, which has been excellent. Trying to gather data and information, input and guidance when we're trying to consider the local issues. We're trying to make sure we have the issues raised by local people. We're trying to input regarding council proposals. So can we tie up with any proposals that you have? And trying to unlock opportunities in land use management. So how can we collaborate in large scale projects? And then there's the operation and maintenance of ongoing schemes. So it's this collaborative working between ourselves, the main drainage organisations, and councils and other organisations, which is where the benefit can be drawn here. So the proposed pilot scheme, which I've mentioned a couple of times, is a proposed sustainable drainage scheme at O'Neill and Crescent. So what the pilot scheme will do, it will attenuate water coming from an existing Northern Ireland Water surface water pipe network, which currently discharges into the White House burn. Now, that ultimately goes down into the water courses close to the A2 Buncrana Road. But what we do, and this is just an artist's impression of what it may look like, that pond, instead of that water going straight into the river and cascading down, we hold it there and we discharge it slowly into the river, which then offsets the water that's going to come into the river network from the existing road. So it's really attenuating the water upstream of where the road scheme is. So as I say, the last bullet point there, this would reduce the peak flow discharging into the receiving water course, which allows us to offset the road scheme whenever it goes ahead. Now, that type of blue-green infrastructure has many community benefits. I'm not going to read out all of those, but you can see water quality, you can see flood risk as a mini benefit, biodiversity. So I mean, there's huge benefits to be had by working collaboratively to bring forward a scheme which is ultimately helping to deliver a road scheme, but it is also all of these much wider benefits. So the community consideration obviously is hugely important. This is a proposal at the moment, and we've been out in the public and had a community information day, which I'll touch on now. This is not a done deal, and if the community are against this, obviously we would have to reconsider what we're doing, and that's why it's so important for us to get the information out, tell people why we're doing it, explain the benefits, and making sure that they have a say in what's going on. So those are some of the issues that we will have to consider. Antisocial behaviour, is this going to be an attraction to antisocial behaviour? We hope not, if we design it in the right way. Health and safety issues, there's not going to be water in this all the time. It'll only be for a short time. So it may be a wetland, but it won't be full of water all the time. So there are health and safety issues. Recreation and amenity space, can we link this into a greenway? Can we make it a place where we can connect into walkways or cycleways? Community engagement, neighbourhood planning, community involvement, that's vitally important for us to make a success of this. So just touching on what we have done, back on the 19th of May this year, we had a community engagement event at Ballymacrory Community Centre between 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock. And we had a lot of interest from the public, and the public came along and listened and I have to say asked a lot of very, very good questions. But the purpose was to inform the community and explain what the scheme was going to do. The community were notified in advance. And I have to say the people at Ballymagordy Community Centre were excellent in trying to give us their facilities. So we had nine respondents who actually gave us written response. But on the day, I felt it went very well, and it was the first step in trying to bring forward a scheme like this. And this opportunity that you're giving me now is another opportunity for me to raise the profile, not only of this scheme, but also of the wider living with water approach that we would like to use across the city. I'm going to skip through these next slides. These are the boards that we presented at the community day, and they go through what living with water is, what sustainable drainage is, and what the purpose of the day is. That was another one. That's the schematic that I've already showed you, what living with water is, where we're looking at the history of the scheme, just like what I've explained to you, how it's linked to the A2 Buncrana Road, the existing site, some of you may be familiar with it, and the existing pipe network that's there, and how we then intend to intercept that pipework with this attenuation pond. And like this is might be a bit small for you looking at it, but this is an example of other schemes we do. And this one to the right hand side, Llanelli in Wales, that's just a green space beside a housing development off to the right. And instead of the water that runs off the road and the houses going straight into the sewers, it runs into this small depression and it sits there for a while. Some of it will infiltrate into the ground, some of it will evaporate, but the rest of it will then discharge into the sewer network at a slower speed, which means it doesn't flood downstream. And those are the types of things that we're trying to do right across the city. And also that's partly what the O'Neill and Crescent scheme is. Chair, that's a very quick run through. I know I'm trying to stick to my 15 minutes allocated time in relation to the presentation. I hope this whets the appetite in relation to what living with water is and what we can do with living with water. We really want to tie up with council and other organisations within the city to bring forward and gather the opportunities that we'll have in the city, so that when we develop the plan, all of those opportunities are in there and allow us to take forward the best schemes that will improve drainage and wastewater infrastructure right across the city. So, Chair, that's my presentation. Hopefully, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Simon. Have we anyone wishes to pass comment in the chamber or on the chat box? No? Councillor Jackson.
Well, thanks, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And I suppose in relation to living with water, we've all seen the impact of climate change and the devastating impact that it can have to residents and people who are at homes that are prone to flooding. So any steps that we can take to try and mitigate that and protect people against the impacts of adverse weather needs to be welcomed. There's, I suppose, just in relation to the presentation, because there was a few. Well, first of all, it's very welcome, and there was reference to the H2 zone housing land on the Buncrana Road, and that was seen as a constraint. When I think of any SUD schemes, the one that jumps to mind is a SUD scheme that was incorporated as part of the Ballyone development in the waterside, and it does exactly what this presentation has outlined, and it seemed to be a developer-led scheme to protect future residents of Ballyone from any increased risk of flooding as a result of climate change. So there's a SUD scheme that's incorporated as part of that development. Now, I don't know what if there was any involvement with the Living with Water program as part of the design of that scheme, but it's something that I was very interested in and would like to see more of as we see applications coming forward. So, if the A2 Buncrana Road general area is seen where there's a strategic importance or there's a huge potential and a need for schemes such as this, could a SUD scheme be incorporated into that any private or social development that's coming forward? I know there's some planning permission given on the H2 land, but there's still huge potential there. In relation to the catchment issues that were highlighted, one of the issues was identified culverted watercourses, and I know from engaging with residents, particularly in that general area that was identified in the presentation, there had been homes that had been devastated by flooding, and one of the flood alleviation schemes involved culverting watercourses. They protect those watercourses from being blocked up and ultimately leading to flooding incidents. So there's residents, particularly in around the Pennyburn area, that feel that they've been given protection because of by the culverting of watercourses. If there's any suggestion that these culverts would be opened up and turned into streams for additional benefits and stuff like that, is there any potential that could reintroduce the risk of flooding to those homes? Because I know it's something that would cause a lot of concern if there was any work that was carried out to undo some of the protection measures that had been introduced. And just in relation to the scheme that was that's been identified for O'Neill and Crescent, again, it looks fantastic. It fits into the wider initiative around water storage and having a more sustainable sort of sustainable model around handling and dealing with increased volumes of water. But it's come back to the earlier point. If these schemes are developed and designed as part of any future development within our city and district, it's much it's much easier because once we try to introduce a scheme and they are an already developed area, there's all sorts of concerns that arise out of that. And I'm just referring back to the scheme that was incorporated into the Ballyone lands. That will never cause an issue because anybody moving into the area will understand that was designed as part of the overall the overall scheme. So if we're thinking strategically and long term, I would very much welcome any engagement with the Living with Water and our own planning department, just to ensure that if there's any opportunities going forward for any future development, that this program has an input into the future development of our city and district. And that's and I know it's not a short-term fix, but in terms of a strategic approach, that seems it seems a very encouraging way forward. But on behalf of Sinn Féin, I just want to welcome you to the committee. It's a very welcome and timely presentation given the increasing adverse weather events that we've had over recent years. So we need to be thinking differently. We need to have a strategic focus on how we as a city and district deal with the increasing pressures that's coming along with climate change. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And just before I bring you back in to respond to Councillor Jackson's, if you don't mind, if a couple of speakers, and I might put in another two, and then let you respond to the three, and then we'll deal with the further queries. So Alderman Hussey, you're next on the list.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Simon Pitt, for the presentation. I'm a rural councillor, as my colleagues in council well know, and I think I'm right in saying that what you presented is specific to the city area of our district council overall area. And there's a slide there that talks of benefits to Derry City Strabane District Council. Are the benefits limited to within the red line that you indicated? Because I'm mindful of the Belfast example that you showed there and the overall impact of the Foyle Basin and issues that do lie further upstream within our district council area, Strabane, a prime example, and some of our other communities. So, can you see a benefit in that will spread from this to the rest of the district? I totally understand the slowdown or the project to slow down the water moving downstream and causing issues. And I suppose from a rural perspective, going back years and years, the landscape itself would have been part of the slowing down, where rivers were allowed to flood into fields, etc., and indeed forestry, a very important factor in reducing the quickness that the water will egress into the rest of the system. So the issues further upstream, I suppose, are pluvial and fluvial as opposed to tidal. But can you see advantages that will accrue beyond the city within the scheme? A very welcome scheme and totally understandable. But from the point of view beyond the city, are there advantages there? I will mention one issue that will come up later on, and I don't know if your group has been involved in this, but that would be drainage issues that apply to the former Maherboy dump and the A5 scheme or the A6 scheme going through that. There are concerns, and you mentioned in your presentation their collaboration on large-scale projects. This will be a fairly large-scale project, so I'm wondering if if there's been any input within the hydrological issues that will arise through that. Thank you, Chair, and thank you again, Simon.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. And one more, we'll bring in Councillor Dan Kelly. Dan.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Simon and to Pete for the presentation and for the ongoing engagement with Council around this issue. It is timely, as has been mentioned. We've had two significant living with water events over the last 5 years, so this is definitely timely. And I suppose being on the Drainage Council, there is elements of the strategic overview from the presentation at the last council meeting from Jerry and Jonathan. So it's good to see it drilled down now into the detail for the district, or at least for the city. And I note there's two parts really to the presentation: the pilot and the SDIP. So just I have a couple of questions really. I mean, welcome both aspects of it, both the pilot and the SDIP. In terms of the pilot scheme for the A2, I suppose it's great to see this level of detail and work going on at the design stage for a road. But I'm wondering just how quickly will there be learnings coming from that, and how how that can be applied into other new routes, or indeed the learnings can be retrofitted onto existing problematic routes. particularly from the point of view, I'm thinking, through the LDP process of our zoning, our zonings of lands, which will be a process that will be engaged in over the next period of time. Can we begin to look at things, move away from pilots and start to mainstream this whole process so that it's part and parcel, as Christopher mentioned, of the planning process, whether that be surface basins or, as Christopher mentioned earlier, the subterranean detention. In terms of the strategic drainage infrastructure plan, which is a much broader project for the city, that obviously addresses the pluvial and tidal risks of the city, just given where it is. But it's not so clear, as Derek mentioned, the fluvial aspect of that, particularly given the extensive size of the Foyle Basin. So I'm just wondering, is there any consideration? I know the plan is for the city, but the secondary impacts of upstream attenuation for protecting other upstream settlements, for example, Strabane, Lifford, Castle Derg. Are there any plans in place? What kind of modelling has been undertaken for that yet? And is there any? Have they looked at how there could be secondary impacts for those other settlements along the route, just given the size of the basin? And then, is there any plans for areas not getting secondary benefits? And I'm thinking particularly of Eglinton, or are they not part of this consideration? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Simon, if I hand over to you to respond to the queries raised. Thank you.
Okay, Chair, thank you. Thanks for that. Councillor Jackson, I'll come back on the points that I've taken note of here. Hopefully I've got them all. The Ballyowen development, really delighted to hear about that. And again, the work that we want to do is gathering information. Where have other things been done similar to what we're doing? What have the benefits been there, and how can we learn from those? So it's at this stage, it's a lot of data gathering and finding out what has happened in other places. You touched on the approval for SUDs, and again, that is something which Living with Water is about retrofitting. The Living with Water programme initially set out to retrofit the cities, i.e. in Belfast and also in Derry. So instead of just building bigger pipes and bigger concrete walls, we're using blue-green schemes to try and deal with the drainage problems that are there. And you're 100% right to say, well, that's good. But if we then let future developments go on in the old traditional formats, then they're going to be out of date whenever they come down to be 20, 30 years later. So we need to build new developments in a similar fashion, in a similar approach to what the Living with Water approach is. And there is work to be done on that from an approvals perspective, so that we can give guidance to new developers of what the best systems are to put in place and for them to get approval of. And then we have to deal with the maintenance arrangements going on, who maintains that, how it's maintained, and the cost of maintenance. So those are all issues which we have in Belfast as well. And by bringing in these blue-green solutions, it's all right building them, but on a long-term maintenance, who deals with that? And that is something we need to address going forward. And I'm not hiding behind anything in this. You raised at a very, very valid point, and I'm agreeing with you that it's something we need to address. The other aspect you raised about opening water courses, where in certain areas culverts have been used to protect against flooding, and that's right. That will continue to be used. Traditional grey engineering solutions will still be required at many locations. There will not be a blue-green solution. So if we felt that by daylighting an existing culvert that would cause future flooding problems, we wouldn't do it. And that may be where, and if a culvert was undersized, it may be that culvert has to be dug out and replaced as a bigger culvert. So it's not one solution for all. So it is looking at individual cases and doing the modelling around that. And in relation to Annullian Crescent, the Annullian Crescent, the scheme there, I mean, it is sustainable. What we're trying to say is, it was brought forward in association with the A2 Buncrana Road, but that's not just the area we'll be looking at. We're looking right across the city for opportunities. We're keen to get Living with Water to be business as usual. So and I'll come on to the point, Councillor Hussey's point in relation to extending out beyond the city. We're looking to drainage partners to consider living with water first. And if living with water doesn't work, then we'll go into the grey solutions and the pipes that have to be in place. So Anulia Crescent, yes, is a sustainable solution on the close to the A2 Buncrana Road, but we'll be looking at other opportunities right across the city, both on right across the city. In relation, then moving on to Councillor Hussey's point in relation to, are we only looking, will this only provide benefit within the red line? And I don't want to say totally yes, but majority yes, that's where it'll be. I mean, to do a strategic drainage infrastructure plan, you have to draw the boundary somewhere. And I know you understand that. And we are looking at all the pressures and issues in that area and then the opportunities to deal with that. Now, getting back to what I've just said a second ago was we want to bring the living with water approach as being business as normal. So if you move to Strabane, for instance, Strabane may not warrant, because of the issues, may not warrant a full strategic drainage infrastructure plan. But that does not say that the living with water approach and the living with water type schemes could not be implemented in Strabane to help that. And I think we are in talks with council about the public realm scheme that are there, and with DFI roads as well, if we can bring any of our experience from Belfast and from Derry into Strabane and see if there's any blue-green solutions that we can help with there. So there are only two strategic drainage infrastructure plans on the go at the moment. That's Belfast and Derry. But we are trying to expand the living with water approach to be used at locations where it's going to be a benefit. In relation to the dump that you referred to in the S6, we haven't been involved in that discussion with the Living Water Programme team. But again, that may come out when we start to gather the information for the Derry plan. We may be drawn into that, and we're happy to be involved in that. But to date, no, we haven't. And in relation to Councillor Kelly then, and refers to the presentation two of my colleagues gave to the Drainage Council, which I think was accepted very, very well. In relation to the pilot scheme, the A2, the pilot scheme was designed to directly, it came as a result of the work done at the A2, as I said, and it has the chance to have a significant direct impact on the design of the road and not having to do the drainage ponds along the roadside. And again, yes, it can be applied to other routes, and that's what we want. We want to identifying the pressures and issues and what the problems are fundamental in what the solutions are, and the learning that we will get in all of these schemes that we do will go some way to helping us resolve a problem at another point. And again, you talked about the local development plans and the planning process. As I touched on in my response there to Councillor Jackson, living with water at the moment is retrofitting the existing, but we want to make sure that the new development is right as well. So we want to feed into that. And then finally, in relation to the SDIP itself, again, it's getting, will it protect other areas? Again, the benefit will be within the city centre, not the city centre, within the red line that was defined in the previous slide that I shown. But again, the work that we do and the learning that we have can be used in other areas at smaller scale, but still be the blue-green solution to certain problems. Don't get me wrong, there's not always a blue-green solution. Grey concrete will have to be used in certain locations, and we have to. It's finding the best solution that provides the best solution for all of the residents and the people who travel within the city and other areas that we look at. So I think I've covered all of those, Chair. Hopefully I haven't missed anything. Certainly not with intent anyway.
Thank you very much, Simon, for your comprehensive response. We still have two more councillors wishing to speak. Alderman Maurice Devaney first. Maurice.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And on behalf of the DEP, just kind of welcome Simon and Pete here. And thank you very much for the presentation. As other speakers have said, it is timely. that we've had this discussion now, and some of them mentioned we've had some serious flooding issues in around the council area since 2017, and happening more frequent than what we would like. I do appreciate the presentation, really good and detailed, and I think you've touched everything. It's about managing to, living with water and how we manage it, and you've spoke quite rightly about how you manage it from the hill right down with ponds, reduced flooding and others. Probably the only, as you did mention, I think, Simon, and around the lands that you'd hope to do work on or be proposed to work on, land for development, that is always very, very costly and comes at a high premium, as probably quite rightly what you said. But I would take on board, Simon, that this is a pilot scheme, and look, there would be lessons to be learned from this. And I'm a rural councillor as well, and look, as some of the previous speakers, you were talking about Strabane, Castledare, and we know about Eglinton and Drumahoe, and especially Ivy Mead, the issues they have, where if you were coming from those 3 or 4 areas, you'd be saying to yourself, well, look, while we would say that is a good idea because they're upgrading the road, the new A2, some of these areas will never see an upgrade, and look, they would say to themselves, we're being left out of the loop. But I take on board that you do say this could expand out and lessons could be expanded out to those areas. I do also take on board that, look, it's very, very important that we do have community consultation. I think that's vitally, vitally important, as you talked about antisocial behaviour and health and safety, and a lot of other issues that would concern residents and around a scheme like that. And it's good to hear that you had 8 out of 9 content, but there will always be questions as the scheme comes forward, in its entirety. But it's always good to have that improvement. I also agree with some of the rest of the speakers as well, and around as we move forward and the lessons learned. I do believe as future big developments of planning come in to our planning department, it's good to have that conversation with our planning department. And I'm just thinking of any new upgrade of roads now the discussion should be and around this issue here of living with water. And I'm just thinking, Simon, and around the A5 as it moves through some of the villages very, very close to it, and especially Strabane, if we could get the go ahead. I think this is timely for those areas, and I do believe that those discussions should be taking place now for those areas to see what help. You talked about the public realm scheme and around Strabane. I appreciate that. But when there's motorways or major upgrade, it's always handy to tie in, and you're not having a motorway being built and then we're going into another project, and it sort of causes 2 whammies of upset. But overall, delighted with the presentation and look forward to more detail on it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Councillor Maeve O'Neill. Maeve.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Simon, for the presentation. I'll be brief because I think a lot has been covered, through the other speakers. But I suppose, this is obviously an incredibly important programme, both the pilot and the development of the SDIP. And, I think, being honest, we have serious issues in terms of our drainage infrastructure. I know I had highlighted there 2 weeks ago about the huge volume of untreated sewage that's being dumped into our waterways every year. And, in our council area, that's actually not even being recorded. We don't even know how much is going on. There's an estimate at 7 million tonnes, but that might be a significant underestimate. So, we've massive issues with sewage and with drainage, and, other councillors and aldermen have mentioned about, new developments and drainage. And I know of one case where there's a massive new development that's tapped onto existing drainage systems, and as a result, the existing development are having issues with sewage overflow and their own gardens, and that obviously has massive public health implications, and nobody wants to live with that either. It's horrible. So we obviously have issues with pollution in our waterways as well. So I think any investment into our drainage infrastructure and our waterways, I think is very, very welcome. And it's great to see that, Derry is kind of second on the list to get that plan. I suppose my question is just around, it's kind of following on from the rural councillors and aldermen really, around the tributaries that, would connect into the city's waterways. And like some of those tributaries are, not only cross council but cross border. So like particularly when we're looking at the Buncrana Road, the Skeg River's a cross border ecosystem. And I'm just wondering, like, are you working with, bodies and partners in Donegal County Council or in Omagh and Tyrone, or sorry, Fermanagh and Omagh District Council, given the connection with our waterways. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. And there's just one more, Simon, here, Councillor Martin Riley and the Chamber.
Thank you, Chair, for bringing me in, and like others, thanks for the presentation and for having advanced sight of it before we came this afternoon for a chance to read through it. As others have said, there's many locations across the city and district that we could look at as a means of needing attention here. And indeed, the colourful map that you've put on in the presentation in terms of the Greedy Hills and the water flowing down reminds me of where we were only a few weeks ago when we had very heavy rainfall overnight, and the rain eased in the morning, but residents in areas like Avimead were then waiting for the water to come down from the hills and threaten their homes again. So I think that it is very useful to see the department planning for and trying to deal with solutions to this. As others have said as well, I think it is crucial that we incorporate this into the planning process. I'm not a member of the planning committee, but I can see the sense in the planning committee having due regard to all of this when dealing with applications as they come into the system. So I appreciate, the comments that have been made in relation to those points. One thing that occurred to me when I was looking at the name of the presentation in terms of living with water, given the climate change and the difficulties that presents, there are many times when we are living without water in times of extreme weather, in terms of extreme hot weather, and the need to ensure that we are collecting and dealing with our water stretches not just to the times when we're dealing with really heavy rainfall, but also then trying to ensure that we are storing our water and handling it. And I appreciate that mightn't be directly related to this project, but I think it also speaks to how we need to look at what other things that the likes of NA Water are doing in terms of trying to invest in the infrastructure to make sure that leaks, to make sure that those things are being eradicated. I think it is clear that water is a precious resource, and we need to make sure that across all the elements of government handling of water that is dealt with and treated as that type of precious resource. So I appreciate there's not too many questions in that, Chair, but nonetheless, on behalf of the SDLP, just to thank the colleagues coming along this afternoon for the presentation. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. And Simon, if you wish to respond to the queries raised by Alderman Devaney, Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Riley, thank you.
Okay, Chair, thank you very much, Councillor Devaney. And the point probably made by all three councillors, the fact that this, love this to be rolled out to other areas and for areas not to be left out of the loop. And I hope, what I would like to, if I could just give one example, the A2, one of the main reasons we're working in Derry is because the designers of the A2 Buncrana Road realised that this could be a living with water type approach. And it was actually the road designers who brought this to our attention. And from that intervention, that has grown to where we are now with this strategic infrastructure plan. And that's what I want from our key drainage organisations, our infrastructure organisations, so that they're thinking about this approach. So when they're working in other areas, not outside the red line that we showed earlier, that they will look for living with water type interventions. So I think all of this, even this presentation tonight and interactions that I have with colleagues right across the department, highlights the fact of the work that we're doing, and hopefully that will make sure that areas where living with water will work, those areas aren't left out of the loop. Community engagement I see as 100% top of the list. If we don't have buy-in from the community, we won't do these things. It just won't happen. And the more questions we get from the community about their concerns, the more this will feed into the development of the plan and how we take it forward. The point I would make both to Councillor Devaney and also Councillor Riley at the end there, the planning process. I just want to pass comment on the fact that the planners within Derry City and Strabane District Council have been excellent with us. They attended some of our workshops and really contributed to the discussion. So I intend 100% to keep that interaction going. And in relation to Councillor Devaney about the F5, I mean, the designers of the F5 will be looking at all of these nature-based catchment management approach to the drainage of that road. Where I'm not involved, but I know for a fact that they will be looking at these methods in relation to the drainage for the F5. Councillor O'Neill touched on combined sewer overflows, and I think touched on the untreated discharges into our water courses, and they come from combined sewer overflows. And if I could just touch on the three objectives that we have: protect against flooding, and that's probably what we've talked about most. But the enhance the environment, and that's one of the areas that if we can keep the clean water out of the combined sewers, that means the combined sewer overflows will discharge on fewer occasions. That means there'll be less pollution in our water courses. So if we manage water properly and more naturally down to the catchment, then we can hopefully reduce the number of combined sewer overflows right across the city, and that will then improve water quality both in the river network and also down then into Lough Foyle. We have been working. Pete and his team, and maybe bring Pete in after finished here if he wants to say something about. We've been working with Donegal Council, and we realised that Skeg, is a cross-border river, and the impact that whatever we do here, will have an impact downstream. So we're very, very aware of that. And Councillor Riley, you welcome your points, and particularly your point about the planning process. And although we're not dealing with the provision of water in this, you're right to say that obviously water is a very, very precious commodity resource, and we have to, and I know NI Water invest a lot of time, effort, and resources into maintaining the water supply right across, right across all areas. So, Chair, I think that's it. I'm not sure if
I can come in there, Simon, just on that point around the Skeg River. Yeah, very aware of the sensitivities of that water course. The engagement through the A2 Buncrana Road scheme with both the Donegal County Council and also the Office of Public Works, who are the authority in the Republic of Ireland. That early consultation has been carried out, and they have highlighted concerns around, for example, historical flooding issues in the area of Burnfoot and other areas. So that has all been fed into the considerations around the design of the road scheme. And as Simon mentioned, the attenuation approach, the SUDS, sustainable drainage and attenuation, as part of the road scheme, and has been factored into the O'Neill Crescent pilot design as well. So that's a very, very valid point, both on the water quantity and flood risk side, but also on the water quality side as well, cross border. That's the only point I think I wanted to make. Thank you.
Are you content, members? And as far as I see, other than that, Simon and Pete, I think we just, on behalf of the committee here, we thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you very much for responding to all the queries that have been raised by the members. And
thank you, Chair. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, and we'll allow then they have to be taken out of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, next item is item number 6, and it is chairperson's business. I have 3 items, and we will keep it brief because it is 5 o'clock now at this stage. First one is Councillor Stephen Edwards. Councillor Edwards.
Chair, thank you for letting me in to raise this issue under Chair's business, and I'll try and be as brief as possible. Chair, I think it was May this year, raised a motion around Mornside Walk in Say Mills, and I've been down there recently, and it has fallen into a state of disrepair. The pathways are falling to keep, they're not kept in a very good state, and as you are aware, Chair, there's dog fouling everywhere. There's a lack of facilities in terms of bins, seatings, and the list goes on. And there's even in the general area a lot of antisocial behaviour. In a field next to the walkway, over Halloween there was a big bonfire, which impacted many residents negatively. And even Chair, the swinging bridge down there as well, the famous swinging bridge, it's very slippy, it's full of moss, and I just feel that the area is a bit neglected. And residents and community groups within Say Mills have approached me about this. The area it's widely used by many people in the local area, and from even further apart. It is one of the areas that within the DEA that has some sort of outdoor recreation, especially that council control. So the motion passed, I think it was in May this year, Chair. I'm aware that the lease is up for the area, and I would like to basically ask, can we get a report to come back in the committee, just give an update on the Mornside Walk. I request as well engagement with the sports teams down there and with the new owners, Moraines as well, of the area, just to engage with them on future plans for the site. I think it's one of the most beautiful areas within our council. Chair, I believe you've been down there recently yourself and walking down there recently yourself, and I hope you would agree. But I would like to make sure that the area is it's retained, that it is upgraded, that it's protected and developed adequately. And I've just, as I say, I would just like a report to be brought back in this committee on it. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, happy to bring a report back to the committee. I'll see if we can get it back in for November. If not, it'll be it'll be December. But the committees are actually a week earlier in December, so if it isn't December, it'll be January. But we can update you, Councillor Edwards, in the meanwhile. But we'll bring a report back as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards, for raising it. And again, the issues you've raised are the DARE councillors in particular will be aware. It is a lovely spot down there. It's well used. There have been incidents of antisocial behaviour. So, again, we'll look forward for that report coming back. And thank you for raising it, Councillor Edwards. Next on my list is Councillor Angela Dobbins. Angela?
Thank you for that, Chair. Look, Chair, once again this week, a real ugly word has raised its head, and that word is mica. And whilst we all welcome the development of redress by the Republic of Ireland government for those living in Donegal who were affected by mica, unfortunately residents in Northern Ireland are not eligible. And until recently, it was just an assumption that Northern Ireland applications were just for holiday homes in the Republic. But it has now come to light that residential properties, and my particular concern is for those in our city and district that have been affected by substandard materials such as the mica blocks. Dura are stating that they have no role in any potential redress. And the Department of Finance in Northern Ireland has said that discussions around the potential redress scheme for those affected by mica in the north would potentially be for the future executive ministers. And have further stated that regulation of the standards for construction products falls under the CPR regulations, which are a reserved matter and the responsibility of the UK Parliament. So, Chair, this is a clear case. It's nothing to do with us, but it's up to them. And as to who or what department should be addressing the problems. So whilst the government authorities play round and round the gardens, residents in our council area are left with not only their homes crumbling around them, and excuse the pun, but their very lives are falling apart. So therefore, Chair, with your indulgence, I have a proposal that I think is vital to be considered today at this appropriate committee. And I'll put it in the chat box there, Chair, for you to see. It's the council recognises the ongoing problem regarding mica and the potential problems associated with this issue, and calls on this council to assist by quantifying the number of our residents whose homes are affected by the issue, and to explore the need to further expand governmental compensation schemes to include the residents of our city and district. At the end of the day, these are our people here with that we should be sort of looking after and pointing them in the right direction. And I do know that on the 15th of this month there is a meeting in Letterkenny which is addressing this. So maybe that it might be worthwhile, maybe our council officers or representation be at this meeting as well. Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much.
Councillor Robbins, I thank you very much for raising the issue. That's an important issue. We do have time to bring that in as a motion to the full council. So in that regard, I have no issue with it being raised, and I think I don't think there would be any issue in the council and this committee bringing a report back. There had been a report done previously, and we hadn't found any properties that had been tied in. But and I do fully understand your passion on the issue, and again, it's a vital issue. But I think it would get more airtime, if you want to put it that way, and it's not just about that. But I think it would have maybe more impact at the full council, and I do believe there's still time to get it brought in, isn't there?
I appreciate your thoughts, Chair, and yeah, I will do so. If it's not too late, I don't believe it is, but. To be quite honest with you, yes, I do know that there was support. I do know that Councillor Duffy had brought it up, and there was reports. But yes, we've heard it, and it has been proven that there is residents here, and in particular my own DEA, the Ballyarnett area, that have mica problems. So we can't leave them out in a limb, that not pointing them in the right direction and putting a shoulder to these people, because they're at their wits' end. Like it's their homes at the end of the day, Chair. Thank you.
Chair, through you, just for members' information, firstly, just to advise members, we have been made aware of one property that the residents have advised they have had mica blocks tested and have found mica, and I do believe that's been in the local press recently. Just to advise members that officers from council have been in contact with that particular one resident. So far as I'm aware, members, and certainly we will double check with other officers of council, but we're not aware of any other individual properties at all in the district. In relation to the seminar in Letterkenny, I do believe a number of our officers have registered to attend that, and will be able to find out from the learning of that. And again, happy to follow up from the notice of motion, members, if it comes out of council. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Karen. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks to Karen, and thanks Councillor Robbins for bringing it forward, and for Councillor Ferguson for seconded. But if you can put it in to the notice of motion at full council, and again, I would be minded that it will be supported. So we will move on to the third and the last bit of chairperson's business I had, and that was Councillor O'Neill. Maeve.
Thank you, Chair. And I suppose it's just given the kind of week that's in it with COP27 and Derry City Tribandishire Council's involvement in COP26 last year, I just thought it important just to highlight, the conference happening in Egypt. And in Glasgow last year, we've seen massive mobilisations of activists on the streets, and there are planned actions and mobilisations this Saturday across the globe, actually. I think this year's COP's going to be very different from last year's. Not maybe an outcome, but more in how it's been conducted. It's been taking place in an isolated and heavily policed Red Sea resort, which makes it even more inaccessible and exclusionary to grassroots organisations and civic society, and particularly those in the global south. And that's particularly important given they're most vulnerable to climate breakdown. And with the Egyptian authoritarian government, there's going to be no real opposition allowed near the conference, and the Egyptian government have banned public demonstrations, which I think have been an integral part of COPs over the last few years. And activists in Egypt have called for world governments as well to confront the Egyptian government on its human rights abuses and its shocking treatment of political prisoners. And I think, that in terms of the context of this year's COP, it's unfolding against, growing climate chaos, ecological destruction, as well as economic recession, and alongside that, worsening poverty and inequality. And, on Sunday there, the first day, the UN chief has already warned that the world is on a highway to climate hell. So none of the projections are looking too favourable, to be honest. And, I suppose like Glasgow last year, we're probably not going to see from this COP any dramatic or effective emission reduction targets, or any agreements to end fossil fuel growth. And we're probably going to see more loopholes agreed to let corporate polluters keep on polluting to profit from climate destruction. And I think kind of in the context of the worsening economic crisis, it's going to make addressing the climate crisis even more difficult. States and corporations, as we've seen here, are rushing to increase fossil fuel production to offset the deepening energy crisis, rather than investing in a seismic transition to renewables. And I suppose environmental organisations across the globe have been calling for a response and action from governments that the crisis demands. But yet again, it's just not happening. And I think fossil fuel companies are continuing to take the hand, and they have far too much sway in political decisions. And like just last week, BP, it was shown that they've made £7 billion in profits in the third quarter of this year. So that's £900 a second in profits. So in terms of fossil fuel companies and the cost of living crisis, it's not a cost of living crisis that we're having, but a cost of corporate greed crisis, and which is punishing the vast majority of people who are struggling to heat their homes and feed their wains, but also sending the climate and the ecological collapse. So just to highlight, COP is happening. I don't hold much hope in it. And it's really important now more than ever that people campaign and organise to actually bring about the change that's needed, that's going to avert catastrophic climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill, for your comments, and they will be noted. Members, I will, and that's all the chairperson's business I have. I would move on to item number 7, which is the matters arising. So if anyone has anything they wish to raise in matters arising, they can either highlight it or put it in the chat box. One thing that I will raise, I'll just raise it with Connor, and it was, sorry, I'll come back to you, Councillor O'Neill. It's 22322, and it was just a thanks for, we had a productive workshop in Strabane in regards to the bilingual signage policy. I don't believe that's the end of it, though. There'll be more discussions further, but just it was a productive workshop, and I think it was very frank and very open for those that were able to attend. But just tying into that. Councillor O'Neill has ER 222/22. Right, Mayor, go on ahead.
Cheers. And yeah, just to agree with you, the bilingual signage workshop I thought was very helpful in Strabane there last week. I suppose this is just kind of on rights of nature, and just there a few weeks ago, I thought it was important to note just DFI's actions in Newry, in the Green Bank Industrial Estate, where at 2 o'clock in the morning, there was 20 ancient oak trees cut down, which were over 200 years old, and that was deemed to be part of a flood alleviation scheme, which there was massive opposition to these oak trees being cut down, given their historical significance and the fact that we have very few ancient oaks left, or ancient trees left. And DFI are trying to muddy the waters in terms of who gave the order to cut these trees down at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I think it's when it comes to who's going to speak for these trees. Trees are an important tool in flood alleviation, and there's been question marks over the decision to cut these down, given like other engineering solutions to flood alleviation. And the contractors, they refused to identify who had authorised them to carry out or enable this act of environmental vandalism when they were confronted. And I think, it was interesting the next morning, just as the pulp was still gathering for these trees, that the DFI they put out a public consultation on planning review to protect the environment. And I felt that was a good example of greenwashing, given this is DFI's scheme to cut down 20 ancient oaks, yet they're trying to cover that up by putting out a consultation on environmental protection and planning. But I think it's something that, it's happened in other areas like Stragmallis. I think it's something we need to be acutely aware of. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill, for raising those issues there. Councillor Emma McGinley there, ER 231/22. Emma.
Good Chair. It's just in relation to the one-way system at Ferry Street, and I had raised this at last month's committee, and I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that the public consultation on that one-way system has now opened. I welcome that, and the fact that it is public as opposed to just engagement with specific stakeholders means that the residents, etc., and around that area have been included within that process. So that's welcome. And just to encourage people to respond to that, because I think there has been a lot of, particularly on social media, feedback in terms of the one-way system. But I know I've put a comment underneath something I have put up around the one-way system to encourage people that if they have views to feed them in. But just to encourage the public, I know that the council have put it out in our social media channels as well, but they engage in that process, and hopefully we'll see what comes back from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McGinley, for your comments in relation to that. They'll be taken on board. Members, I don't see anybody else with anything else and matters arising. And therefore, we'll go into for decision here, and that is item number 8, street naming and numbering, and that's Connor.
Thanks, Chair. This is to inform and seek members' recommendation on the outcome of a recent application to provide bilingual signage at Circular Road, Derry and 5 Acres, Strabane. The report details the applications and the process gone through in terms of the policy, with the results of the plebiscite detailed on the table, with Circular Road achieving 98% and 5 Acres 100%. And the recommendation, therefore, is that members are asked to approve the erection of bilingual signage at Circular Road, Derry and 5 Acres, Strabane.
Thank you, Chair. Just to formally propose that we accept that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. And Councillor Boyle had indicated in the chamber, and I do see that Councillor McGinley and Councillor Kelly are content with it. So we'll take Councillor McGinley, if that's in order, as seconding Councillor Boyle's, and Councillor Kelly supporting it. And with nothing else, we'll declare that item passed then, members. The following items, members, are open for information, and I will just go through them, and if you wish to raise them, I'll go through them in order, and if you wish to raise an issue, we'll touch it. Item number 9, building control. I don't see anyone. Item number 10, the proposed disabled parking bays. Councillor, no. Item number 11 is the flooding update. Right, Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, for bringing me in, and can I thank officers for having this on the agenda. I know we pointed out last month that it hadn't been added, so appreciate that we are here today with it on the agenda for discussion. Chair, although specifically the reason that we asked for this to be a recurring item on the agenda followed on from a serious flooding in the council area, which happened in a range of locations, I note that the report DFI is limited to one location in the council area, and not in my DEA where there has been significant flooding. I appreciate that the Minister, before he left office, had answered an Assembly question which gave an update in relation to the work that DFI are doing in terms of bringing forward schemes or Ivy Mead, Drumahoe and Eglinton. So I'm disappointed that DFI haven't put that into the report that they've presented to Council. If the Minister was in a position to give an answer to Sinead McLaughlin MLA on the 24th of October. So in the Minister's answer, he indicates that the scheme that he's designing, or his department was designing, will be brought forward and completed by the end of this year. So I would appreciate if officers could engage with DFI to see that the report that was meant that the Minister's indicated would be completed by the end of the year, if that's possible, to be presented to the Council as part of this standing item on the agenda in next month's meeting, which would seem to fit the timetable that the Minister has indicated in his answer. And I appreciate obviously that we don't have an Assembly and the Minister is no longer in post, but if he give a commitment, hopefully the officials in DFI will be able to meet it. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Members, we can specifically ask that question, and if any members have any other areas that they have specific questions of any of the departments, please let me know, and we will then follow that up in the correspondence with the departments, and we can get the information that members want.
Appreciate that, Chair. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Councillor Riley. Item number 12 is Killaloo Play Area, and I have Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And look, I welcome the report here coming back and around the small play area out on Gulf Road. It's known as Killaloo. Chair, I have to say I have spoken to Colin Kennedy about 2-3 weeks ago regarding an issue of new fencing and around the play area, and concerns were seriously raised about the type of fencing. There was a wooden fence, but there were 2 strands of what is known as barbed wire along the top of it, and the residents out there thought there would be health and safety issues and around that. Now, Colin wants to go out, maybe he's busy, but look, I would like maybe, Karen, that I get some information back on that again. And Chair, look, I do take on board that there is another site probably a mile or a mile and a half away, but this is a small area and there wasn't a big lot of upkeep in it. There was only a small kickabout area with a couple of small goals in it. And look, it was very, very vital for the young people over the summertime in that area. And I do believe, Chair, that we have, we have missed a trick here in the book, because when you go out now and look at where the play site is, when you look totally to your right, there was a view there up that lovely landside. It's obscured now by a mountain of clay, which is probably two-story buildings high. And people have raised concerns to me and around now that the play area is that low. And I believe we should have been in discussions with DFI maybe to have risen the play area a bit, that had left a better situation for them for a play area, because it is very low. And look, I do believe, Karen, I think that could be looked at the moment, in discussion with DFI, because I thought I was led to believe that when we transferred the site over for DFI, was there an agreement that the site would be level with the rest of the road, because it's really down in a hole now and it needs a lot of work. But once again, Chair, it is only a kickabout area, and I think it's a vital part for the children out there in the summertime. And there are quite a number of new houses built out there, and there's more being proposed in that area. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, I will engage with the officers and make sure that we engage with DFI and the contractors on site. I do know that there had been some engagement, but certainly I'm happy to follow up on those points, particularly that were made today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Alderman Devaney. Item number 13 is the Maboy update, and the first is Alderman Hussey. Derek.
Thank you, Chair. Myself and I think 2 other councillors attended the Maboy meeting in Ebrington in the community centre there. And one of the issues raised towards the end was regard to the alignment of the new A6, that section, and it's an impact that some residents are concerned it will have on the hydrological features in and around the area. And I suppose that ties in with the previous presentation that we had with regard to living with water. Could officers investigate this further as to the remediation and the impact that the current proposed route of the A6 is going to have on that matter for those residents? Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, happy to raise that with DAERA and NIA. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Alderman Hussey. I do have Councillor Maeve O'Neill on item 13 also. Maeve.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just kind of with regards to the criminal trial. I think I'd asked it last month just around the kind of other charges that were on the books, and I know that there's two people who have further charges remaining, but I think there was charges with regard to tax evasion and stuff. So it was just a question, to DAERA, if they do know it or whoever does know it, kind of like, for the people who are being sentenced, are those charges now dropped? And it's just a note that the sentencing was supposed to happen on Monday there, and then I think it's been postponed now to the 22nd. But that could change again. Thanks.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Members, we did raise that with DAERA, but it doesn't seem to have made its way onto the report, so we will raise it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Maeve. Item number 14, members, is the Newton Stewart Town Centre regeneration, and we have Councillor Edwards and Alderman Hussey. So, Stephen.
Chair, thank you. And I originally raised this issue in Business and Culture Committee, but I realise it is cross-cutting with this committee. Chair, I've spoken with the traders in Newton Stewart and the consultant appointed to represent them, and there is an unhappiness among them regarding progress made to date in addressing these issues, especially around town centre regeneration and traffic issues in the town, and also looking at the tourism opportunities. The issues raised in Business and Culture last month, Chair, were around parking, and there's major issues there around parking, especially on the main street. The current car park, Chair, as you're aware, isn't fit for purpose, and I did highlight that there are some quick wins there, especially in terms of access and creating an additional pedestrian access into that car park, which would be quite straightforward, but it hasn't happened yet. And I know there's other issues around traffic management, Chair. I do think they're for the other committee, but I do like in reading up, Chair, I do know the council has undertook sort of, I think it's retail health studies, which include an element of traffic analysis, and Newton Stewart, it was undertaken in 2018 and 2021. And I'm aware the council has also got some baseline traffic report and information, and if it is in relation to this committee, I would be grateful for a copy of that information, Chair, and if not, I'll reach out to the other committee. Chair, in terms of the regeneration plans, and as I've said, the traders are and residents are unhappy with progress, and with in respect to an engagement with traders and residents. I do welcome the fact that there will be, in this paper, as outlined, there'll be some additional engagement early next year. So I do welcome that, Chair. There is a general feeling, though, and I want officers to be aware of this. There is a general feeling in Newton Stewart that the town is being forgotten about. I've picked it up. I've been in Newton Stewart a good bit, and I've picked it up. And that's with speaking with traders and residents. For example, they've highlighted the city deal to me that leaves them out. They've highlighted the recent Halloween celebrations in the city compared to what we got in the district, and they also highlighted the current state of Vaughan's Home and as their only outdoor sort of recreational space in the town. So, Chair, I do want to ask officers, in terms of regeneration plans, what resources they'll be directing towards this? Will they be internal? Is there a budget set aside, Chair? And have they considered external consultants as well if their internal teams are under pressure? And I do want to urge, Chair, that officers engage, especially with traders, on this issue. I do think communication is key here, and I think those traders need to feel involved and feel like they've inputted into development plans. At the minute, I don't think that's the case. And Chair, apologies, but the last issue I'm going to raise is around tourism. I'm going to be very brief. I did amend Councillor Maguire's original motion on sure to include specific provision around tourism. There's some quick ones there around promoting Newton Stewart. There's a lot of historical monuments, there's castles, and there's other areas of historical significance. I don't think they're being properly utilised. I'd like to see an assessment carried out, Chair, of simple things like even brown signs directing people off the A5 and to the town, or having a heritage trail and mapping out the areas of historical significance and trying to promote them and trying to attract visitors into the town. But Chair, just to finish, ultimately, I do want to see Newton Stewart thrive and do well. I want people to see a council care about the town itself and about them. And at the moment, Chair, I don't see that happening, in all honesty. Again, Chair, thanks for letting me in and raising those issues.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, if I can just come in and again update on some of those issues, members, it's disappointing really to hear that the traders haven't felt engaged with. I know that the Chief Executive, the Director of Business and Culture, and I met with them in Newton Stewart one evening a few months ago. Obviously, from your report, you will see that quite a bit of multi-agency and multi-departmental work has been ongoing in order to actually pull a regeneration framework and plan together for Newton Stewart. Certainly, we clearly recognised that, you know, Newton Stewart had over the years not had the regeneration and potential recognised by government, central and local, and that we were fully committed to working together with colleagues in central government and indeed the local community and the business community to address that. So I think if I bring Tony in just very quickly, members, your report today has just provided you with somewhat of an update on where we are. We're moving this forward, members, as you are aware. We do have very limited resources and very, very large numbers of regeneration master plans that we are working on at the minute. And really, we have prioritised this as best we can. We would like to have it be further on than it is, but again, we are working on it as quickly as we possibly can. Tony, if I maybe bring you in for a slightly further update.
Thank you, Chair, Karen. In response to Councillor Edwards' query, I think it's just important just to also emphasise the engagement and our commitment to continue that engagement. I am aware that the consultant acting on behalf of the business group is actually in regular engagement with the Director of Business and Culture, who is providing updates in terms of where we are at. It is our intention to continue that engagement following the technical assessment and analysis phase that we're currently undertaking, and we are anticipating that to be complete now sometime next month, and that we meet with the businesses and indeed other stakeholders in January for them to indicate and highlight to us what their key issues are. We're aware of some of those from the meeting that Karen has alluded to that we had a few months ago with the businesses, but obviously the nature of any regeneration framework will be to look at as many themes as possible over and beyond parking, traffic management, and also looking at themes such as business development, tourism, heritage, public realm, and indeed other themes that you would expect to see within a heritage master, or sorry, a regeneration framework. Just finally, from a resourcing perspective, as Karen has indicated, this has been led by the officer team across both departments under both the Director of Environment and Regeneration and Business and Culture leadership, and we're working that at this moment in time. The other, say from within the report itself, and you will note that whilst there is a commitment for us to capture all of those and prioritise those actions, those agreed actions, I might add, and also engaging with yourselves as elected members, it is important to highlight that over and beyond the resources that it takes for us to prepare this piece, that, you know, it may not necessarily guarantee resources immediately to deliver these, but we hope that the framework, when adopted through committee, will help us start to focus funders in terms of helping us deliver out on the actions that have been agreed and identified. Thank you.
Are you content at present, Councillor Edwards, for the response?
Content, Chair. Just to highlight, that meeting, I believe, was in May this year. At 6 months later, I do think additional engagement with the traders is needed, Chair. But yeah, I want that. But I look forward to the development and to the further engagement, especially next year, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Alderman Hussey on the same issue.
Thank you, Chair. And whilst I understand the officers' feedback, I think it's fair to say that the frustration that we are witnessing from many quarters in Newton Stewart is, I suppose, due to past long-term bypassing of concerns that every single elected representative from the Derg has raised at one time or another. Yes, we're getting round to it now, but we're getting round to it now at a time when financial pressures, may prevent us being able to fulfill the desires both of officers and more specifically of the residents and business people in Newton Stewart. The issue of engagement, I do have a slight concern because I'm sure that yourself and other elected representatives will be aware there are actors in Newton Stewart who are not being kept on board by those with whom council are engaging. So there's that need to ensure that all stakeholders are being brought along within the scheme. I note there's a prospect of delivery in 2023, which is under the business facade painting scheme, etc. But Councillor Edwards has rightly highlighted major issues, and that particular scheme, from my perspective, I would regard as perhaps, to use the expression, papering over the cracks of serious underlying infrastructural issues, again, that have been highlighted there by Councillor Edwards, car parking, etc., and the ignoring of the tourist potential that does exist in and around Newton Stewart. Fully understand the concerns and the pressures that officers are outlining there, but expectations have been raised, and we need to look at what can we do, what can we get on the ground to convince the people and the businesses in Newton Stewart council are serious about their concerns. Let's see how it goes going forward, but there need to be short-term gains within the overall plan that is being developed for Newton Stewart. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your comments, Alderman Hussey. And again, as the Derg councillors will agree, Newton, it seems to be an area that has been overlooked, sadly, and it's at the periphery of our council district. And as I would refer to constantly about Castlereagh being the third settlement within our Southern district, Newton Stewart is the fourth, accordingly. And again, it needs to be looked about as well. I know naturally it maybe lies more looking towards Oma, just where it's located, but it still needs input, and we do note your comments. Members, we'll move on to item number 15, which is the asphalt plant in Burnfoot, and I have Councillor Maeve O'Neill. Maeve?
Thanks, Chair. And it's just a note that Donegal County Council didn't feel sorry, I've lost kind of what they'd written here, but just didn't feel that our objection was valid or relevant, really, in terms of the asphalt plant. And I would disagree. I think this council, when it was discussed previously on separate occasions, would disagree, given it's on a border area. And it has cross-border pollution implications. I just this decision hasn't been finalised yet, which I think is good, and I just want to commend the South Anishone Against Asphalt Plant campaign, because it's their efforts in campaigning against the asphalt plant that has delayed this decision being made. And I'd seen there in May 2021 last year, the asphalt plant had been advertising for hiring staff, and it shows you just the determination of the campaign against it, as so far being successful. But it would be good if Donegal County Council could update us, when the decision is made, just so that we're aware. That would be great. Thanks.
Through you, Chair. Members, just to quickly update you in terms of this, the correspondence that was received as part of this report was from Bord Pleanála, who I believe are considering the application now at the minute. So we will bring any updates that we receive to members as soon as possible.
I'll bring in Councillor Dobbins and then Councillor Jackson. Angela?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Agree with what Maeve has just said there, but I would even put it stronger. I think it's downright rude. On Bord Pleanála does not consider it necessary to undertake a consultation. So somebody in Dublin is actually saying that Donegal shouldn't talk to Derry. And that's my taking on that. That we don't have an input, and that we shouldn't have an input into this. Of course we should. With the amount of traffic and lorries and heavy duty lorries that's going to go back and forth, well, where are they coming from? And there is no border, and there never will be a border, so they can come and go freely as they want. But they are coming into Derry City and Strabane District Council area, and therefore, yes, we, in the strongest terms, should have some sort of input into this. And I'm sorry if I feel, but I am angry. I'm actually angry at the wording of that letter. Does not consider it necessary for us to have an input. I believe that's rude, and I think a letter going back to them to state, more or less such, but you can put it in your own wording, should actually wing its way towards on Bord Pleanála. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Dobbins will bring in Councillor Jackson. Christopher?
Thanks, Chair. And I suppose in the same vein as the previous two speakers, the response from on Bord Pleanála is disgraceful. But picking up from Councillor Dobbins' point, there is a border there, and we're feeling the consequences of that border every single day of the week. And this is another example of partition failing, of having two systems on the same island that has where there's profound implications of decisions that are taken where our consideration isn't given proper consideration. I know this has been raised in the past. I think it was our mayor that initially raised it on behalf of concerned residents from within our district. And we can't allow this response. They put us off voicing those concerns. I think Councillor O'Neill made reference to Donegal County Council. We have fantastic relationships with our neighbouring council. There is collaborative work taking place on a whole wide range of issues. We've been working collaboratively to develop greenway links. We've been working collaboratively on the Northwest Growth Partnership. We've been working collaboratively on local development plans. This response is in no way reflective of our neighbouring council. This is a completely disgraceful approach from On Board Planala, and we rightly as a council should be challenging that and continuing to stand up for the concerns that our residents have within our district. But as Councillor O'Neill has highlighted, that there's very serious concerns that have been raised within local campaign groups on both sides of that very real border that currently exists. So I just again they voice our support for the sentiments that have been raised by the previous two speakers. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. And the officers will take on board the response from members at this stage. And again, Alderman Hussey has asked that the Director's response be brought forward to the next meeting of the Northwest Regional Development Group. So that can be done as well. Yeah. Thank you, members. Sorry, Alderman Hussey, go on ahead.
It's not the Director's response. It's the response that has been received from the Southern Government Department. If that can be tabled at the next meeting of the Northwest Regional Cross-Border Development Group. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members happy to update the relevant officers on that.
Thank you, members, for your response on that important issue. Item 16 was the FI abandonment, but I don't see anyone on that. So item 17 is the COVID Recovery Small Settlement Programme. And the first speaker I have is Alderman Hussey. Derek?
Just very briefly, the scheme is welcome, but I think officers already know there are concerns with some businesses, particularly those businesses who have maintained their facades and feel that they've been left out of the overall programme there. I don't know if officers have any comment on that, but I don't know if anything can be done about it. But we need to have some way that all business owners in the impacted areas feel that they're getting an equity of treatment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In response to the query, just to advise that at this stage, it is our intention, and we've reported previously back in July as well, that this year it's our intention to target all of the properties in all of the settlements, all the commercial properties, as previously reported. We have indicated that until we have the costs completed, and I'm pleased to note that the design team have been appointed in the past few weeks, and when we have those costs completed, we'll be in a position to assess the costs of the commercial facade painting scheme against the available budget, and at which point it would be still our intention to run with targeting all 224 commercial properties that have been identified throughout the 8 settlements. Should there be an issue with regards to budget availability, then we may have to introduce some filters, particularly based on our eligibility criteria, based on perhaps decorative need. But at this moment in time, members, I think it'd be best that we wait until we have the outcome of the technical assessment and the costs, and at which point then we'll bring a report back to committee to advise you and update you, and if need be, to seek your approval in terms of the way forward. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Councillor McHugh, Rory.
Chair, just to also welcome the report, in particular the extra 295,000 to offset the rapidly increasing construction costs, and I'd also like to welcome the news too that the engagement process is due to start with businesses in that in March 23. I also want to reiterate what Councillor Hussey has pointed out, and it's a point that I have made myself every time we've had an update in this report. I don't want to see a situation where a responsible owner who has maintained their property has painted it regularly, is then losing out. If they wish to avail of the scheme, is then losing out to business whose property has not been maintained for whatever reason. But I think it's an important point to make and to have recorded. Very good, Chair.
Thank you, members, and through you, Chair, happy to take those points on board. And as Tony said, members, we will do the best that we possibly can with the available budget. And I think just members, we do have to bear in mind that the purpose of the funding from the department is to address decline. So really that's what we have to focus on. But as we said, we're going to do the very best we possibly can. It is good to see the additional funding allocated by the department for the project, and we will bring further updates to members as soon as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Councillor McHugh and Alderman Hussey, for your response on that item. Members, I'm looking for a proposer to go. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kelly. Dan, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Chair. It's just on item 17 as well, and I thank the officer for the update in the report. And just given, thinking back over less than a year ago when we started getting these reports coming in, and there was engagement through our community planning process, and particularly the rural issues group. And I was wondering, was there any consideration given to bringing an update to a future rural issues group meeting? Because I think that would be useful to take that information into that forum. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, happy to do that at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Sorry, I almost missed you there. Members, I'm looking for a proposer to go into confidential.
Proposed, Alderman Devaney.
Alderman Devaney.
Seconded, Derek.
Seconded, Derek. Thank you, members.